where you can start your video. So with the line going through it, that means the video is off. The line not through it, that means your video is on. So everyone is looking pretty good so far here on the side, so that's great. Number two, if you can please keep your mics muted. We also have control, but we just don't want any background noise to interrupt with Mary's great talk. And you can see that the same place on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen with the line going through it, that means that your mic is muted. All right, if everyone could rename yourself, you're gonna rename yourself your first name, your last initial, and your school initials. Everybody was shouting out their school earlier. So how you would do that, at the bottom of the screen where it says participants, you'd click on that. And then next to your name, it says rename. And then you're gonna rename it, just type in your name. So like Tahaji Felder, so Tahaji F, comma, HML. So if everyone can start doing that, I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. It'll be your first name, last initial, school initials. All right, I see everyone starting to do that.
Board in the house, board in the house, board in the house, board in the house.
If everyone can please mute your mics. All right, awesome. Everyone is doing that. Okay, great, great, great. Everyone's already familiar, I've seen so far, with the chat box. So just to remind everyone where that chat box is, it's at the bottom right, on the bottom of your screen. Here it says chat, you just click on that, and that's where you can put all your questions that you have for Mary. Raise your hand or reactions. If you want to raise your hand in the same participants box, here in the middle, it might say raise your hand, or the hand might be right next to your name. So it'll say raise your hand or lower your hand here. So again, any questions, and then your hand will pop up next to your name here. And that's where you can raise your hand. And again, that'll be for questions for Mary, which will be moderating and monitoring the chat box. And then last but not least, this session is going to be fun. Like I said, Mary's an amazing speaker. It's going to be action-packed. Take notes. Please be present and enjoy the session. So I'm just going to turn over to Daniel. Daniel is going to introduce our amazing guest speaker.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Tahaji. First and foremost, just want to say shout out to everybody who actually took time out of their day to come and join us today. Y'all are the real MVPs. I'm not going to cry like Kevin did. That being said, Miri Rodriguez is actually the head of global internship program at Microsoft, which is a really, really cool position. But the truth of the matter is she's so much more than that. She's an amazing storyteller. She's somebody who helps brands bring their story to life. She's passionate about that. She's passionate about what she does. She's passionate about helping others to share their stories, to build their companies. And I can tell you from talking to a lot of business owners, it isn't just what you do, it's the story that you share that really helps people to resonate with your company. So as we're starting to go into looking into competition season, as well as just tips for how to tell a strong story that resonates with people. And I just want to make a point that it's not just about your business. Some of you are seniors that are going to be going into the real world very soon. This also resonates with when you're going into your job search, when you're going in and sitting down and doing your college interviews. So take notes. These tips, what she's going to share with you, is absolutely going to be something that's going to be relevant in anywhere that you go in life. These particular tips and tools that she's going to share will help. I would be remiss if I don't shout out the fact that she just wrote a book, Brand Storytelling, and for participation, some of you will be receiving copies of this book today. Without further ado, Miss Miri Rodriguez.
Thank you. What a great intro. Wow. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much. I can't wait to talk to you guys about everything storytelling. But first, I'm reading everyone who's saying hello. Hello to everyone, everywhere, wherever you're calling from. I know it's been a little bit weird to connect differently online. It's just been, we can't underestimate the impact that this whole thing has happened, for the world, and what it's doing for us. What it's doing for us. I've had conversations with a lot of people around COVID, and what that means for the future, right? And we have had to really think creatively about the next thing, and how we do the next thing. What happens in our brains when we have a crisis, for example, is that there are two things that happen to our brain when we have a crisis. One, we fight, or the other one is we flight. So we want to either run away from the crisis, or we wanted to lean in and say, hey, what's the opportunity? What can I do different? How can I pivot differently? And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to think differently about when something happens like COVID, right? A global pandemic that is urging us to use technology, connecting us from different parts of the world. I'm all the way in Seattle, 3,000 miles from Florida, where is my home, and where I went to school, and I lived in Miami, then I lived in Fort Lauderdale for a long time. And here I am, very cold. It's 39 degrees right now, and it's crazy, but we're all connected. And what we're learning through this crisis is people that are leaning in, all of us that are leaning in and tuning into the technology, it's forcing us to think differently. And that's what storytelling does, by the way. It is creative in essence. So I want to share with you some of the practices that I have learned when I failed royally. I failed big at Microsoft for 3 months. I failed. And I want to tell you what happened when I failed. It was a crisis. So the way that I want to do this is I want to make sure that all of us participate. We're going to make sure that all of us have fun today, not just listen to me. I'd love to see your faces if you get on the video. As Haji said, we love to see faces. It's a nice way to connect when you're on video. So I also want to interact with you. So if you have questions, if you want to, raise your hand. I'm looking at the chat. I want to make sure that your voice gets heard, because we want to all have fun in this time, in this space. You can't learn if you don't have fun. So I want you to have fun. So beyond presentation, I want to make sure that you understand why we're doing this for you today, why we're connecting with you today, and why storytelling is important in today's age. It's not just for your business, it's for your life. You and I are storytellers. We have always been storytellers. By the way, you get on chat, you get with your friends, you text, you're telling stories. We all are. We have, at the human level, a cognitive ability to tell stories. And my story with Nifty began a long time ago. It began about 5 years ago. I want to give a shout out to Janine, to the team that has always been around, Chris, to Haji, people that have been and all the teachers. Nifty, the reason I have volunteered for so long at Nifty is because I believe in the vision and the mission that this has for you, and the story that it enables for you. Nifty enables you to think differently. I wish I would have had Nifty when I went to school, when I was in school. I never had a program like that. I came from Venezuela, from the slums of Caracas, and I kind of navigated high school by myself. Elementary school, I learned English at 13, and so I didn't know how to do these things. I didn't have coaches to tell me how to think differently about a business. And you have this opportunity, and I love it because you have a great opportunity to get out there in the world, and out of crisis like this, out of things that you didn't think of would happen, we're living times that unprecedented times, right? And when you think about these times, you think about how the story can unfold and what you are to the story, who you are in that story. Will you be a consumer in the story? Will you be a producer in the story? Your story will shine through if you know how to leverage storytelling techniques, if you understand how characters play in, if you understand who your audience is going to be. How to tell a story will be very different than just telling a story. So I talk about designing story, not just telling stories. And when you think about how I'm going to share this with you, my own story, and how I learned this, think about yours. Think about your own story, maybe your personal branding story, maybe your business story. Maybe you want to talk about your personal story for a job, as Chris said. All these things apply, and all of them and they follow the same idea around storytelling. And one of the things that I'm learning here at Microsoft is that the machines are here. The machines are coming. We have robots. We have automation. We have HoloLens. In fact, there's a building here at Microsoft, Building 92. Across from Building 92, so we have a visitor center, and right across from Building 92, it's our research building. And when you walk in, a robot says hi to you and greets you. And even more remarkable than saying hi, the robot can read my badge, my employee badge, and because it has a chip, it says, hey, welcome, Miri. Where do you want to go today? And so I tell it where I want to go in the building, and it tells me, gives me directions to the building. And then when I get to the building, it actually is mapping my heat, my body heat based on my weight, right? The building is, because it's a smart building. So when I get to the building, I walk in, the lights go on because it knows that somebody's in there, right? The lights go on, the projector comes down, and if I'm the person presenting, my presentation goes on, right? It's already automating my experience. The machines are here. We are living in the future, right? You are natives, you're tech natives. You know this thing, you were born with this thing in your hands. And so you know how to manage this technology. It's really easy for you to just navigate the world of robots. But what's gonna happen really, really soon is that these robots are taking over. And look at these predictions around the things that the robots are gonna be able to do very soon. That's really scary. In fact, translating languages by 2024, that's already outdated. This slide is outdated. We did this at Microsoft last year in July. In July, Julia White, one of our VPs for cloud, she was able to deliver a presentation, and she took out her hand like this. A hologram of herself came out on her hand. Then it went life-size next to her, and it began to speak Japanese while she was speaking English. So it was translating the same content that she was talking about in real time in Japanese. That's happening. Robots are here, machines are here. Look at this, they're gonna write your high school essays. You no longer have to do that for you. If you get yourself a robot, you can get somebody to write your essay for you. Your own personal assistant, driving trucks, working as a surgeon. I mean, well, yeah, I think I'm a mom, right? Actually, I'm a mom of two boys. And my oldest is going to turn 18 very soon, actually in like 15 days. That's amazing. And he's graduating high school this year as well. So he's your age, for those of you who are in high school. And if I think about like a doctor, right, like a brain surgeon, and you know, I have to go to the ER for some reason. My son needs, you know, an emergency brain surgery, and I meet this guy, this doctor or this woman, human, right? And they're like, hey, I got to go operate on your son, sign these papers right here. I don't know if they, you know, if they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend the night before and they're stressed out. I don't know if they got drunk, right? I don't know if they didn't sleep for 16 hours. But if I'm thinking about a robot, right, machine who has been coded to just do this job, I'll probably choose the machine, right? They don't get tired. They don't have to go to the bathroom. They don't have to eat. They're just, all they do is get better at their craft. They get better and better and better. So when you think about this, think about what else are they going to get really good at, right? What are they going to get really good at? Writing, stories. And so what does that leave you and I? What does that leave your business, for example? When you're thinking about innovation, when you're thinking about how you're going to leave a mark in the world, I know your generation is very interested in leaving a mark in the world, in doing something different. So think about that. Amplifying human ingenuity is what Microsoft calls it. The time that the robots are going to go and do all of this work out there, you know, the minutia work, the writing, the surgeons, all those things, writing and driving trucks, that's going to let us get more creative. The human ingenuity means that your brain is going to start working differently. As these robots come in and start like taking over some of that work, you're going to get to do a lot more fun things, a lot more creative things. So when you think about those things, think about what that looks like. At Microsoft, for example, we're looking at changing the way that we're telling our story. For example, when we started at Microsoft, our mission, we talk about your story mission, your brand mission. Our mission was to put a PC on every desk and every home. That was what we started with many years ago, back in the 70s. And then Satya came in about 6 years ago, our new CEO. And he decided, you know, I like that story. That was a good story, but it doesn't work anymore because the Googles of the world came in, the Amazons of the world came in, the Facebooks are here. And now we have a lot of competitors, right? You and I are competing all the time. You and I are competing for everything all the time. We're competing for space. We're competing for time. We're competing for jobs. We're competing for business. We're competing for everything. So when you think about yourself and how you're going to leave a mark in the world, think about your own story. How are you going to go out with that story? A PC on every desk and every home worked because we were the only ones putting a PC on every desk and every home. But then came out the other competitors. And that happens all the time in our business. We're global. And so when you have a competitor, you have to think, how am I going to compete in a way that I have my story, my mark will leave it to the world? So Satya said, hey, I think it's time to change our story. And I see some of you have raising your hands. I'll get to that in a minute. How are we going to do that? So they sat down and they said, we're going to change our story. We're going to make our mission, empower every person and organization on the planet. And if you look at those two, they're kind of the same in the sense that the theme of the story is empowerment. A PC on every desk and every home was empowering to every person and organization on the planet. It really empowered all of us, right? But when you think about the words, the actual story, empowering, to actually say that our job was to empower, it changed the way we worked at Microsoft. It changed the way we thought about ourselves as workers. It changed the way we thought about our mission. In fact, it was put, I'm going to see if I can find my badge here. I haven't used it in a while because I haven't been in the office for a while. But in our badge at Microsoft, oh, here it is. This is our what we call the blue badge for employees at Microsoft. And here, when I take out my badge, you can see, you can see our mission is there too, to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. That means that every time I swipe my badge, every time I open the door at Microsoft, I am reminded why I come to work. And that's important. Why are you doing what you do? Why are you going to go build that business? Why are you going to go get that job? That's very important for you to think about. What is your mission? Why are you going to do it? If you're taking notes, I like for you to write the word mission. And I like for you to just put mission there and start thinking, what is that mission? What will be my mission? What will be my business mission? That's very important. At Microsoft, we began to tell stories that empowered people. That's right, mission. Thank you for that. Yes. When we think about mission, you think about what was ours. Ours was to empower, right? So when you think about mission, we began to tell stories that empowered the world. Here, this is one of the stories that we did for Super Bowl. This was a Super Bowl ad, and it was for Xbox. And the title of the story was called "When We All Play, We All Win." And it was for enabling the Xbox console for people that had disabilities, right? Mm-hmm. So we had an Xbox adapter so people that had disabilities, they can actually use and play with the Xbox, saying that if we all play, we all win. When you think about the mission, think about how your mission actually lands with the world. What will you be doing for humanity, for society? I know that a lot of you, because I've done this research, I know that a lot of you want to work for a company or want to create a company that does way beyond the product or service. So think about that. I'm going to stop right here because I want to look at the chat and see what you guys are saying in the chat real quick. I actually can't see it in my presentation mode. So who can actually tell me what's in the chat?
So yes, so we actually have Wilson that had their hand up. Okay. Question. There was someone else that had their hand up, but they put it down before I got a chance to acknowledge them. So okay. Wilson, if you have your question, you are up.
Wilson, come up. Awkward silence.
Hello. There we go. You're on mute.
Okay.
Wilson?
Do you want to type in your question?
Maybe he was just playing with the hand button and
I see.
put it up.
Okay. Okay. So let's just type all the questions in and then we'll do the raise hands at the end. Let's do it that way so that we don't stop the presentation. So I'll stop in between so you guys can give me a question. So type all your questions in and I'll pause in between. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. So when we're thinking about storytelling, one of the things that happened to me is that I didn't know what it was, right? I was asked to come from Miami, from Florida, and come all the way to Seattle and think about, okay, how are we going to tell stories about these robots, right? What are we going to do with these stories about robots and make them really make them really connected to what we're going to do? So I didn't know. I had no idea. I had never been a storyteller before. I didn't even know that was a title, right? So I went out and I asked a lot of people at Disney, at Coca-Cola. I asked people at the Hyatt, at Marriott, all these really big storytellers. I asked them not what is storytelling, but what it is not, right? I said, hey, can I interview you real quick? What is not storytelling to you? And there was a lot of people who gave me a lot of answers, right? It took me about 3 months to come back with all these answers. And so I realized that storytelling was not this. Think about this. It isn't opinions, assertions. It's not facts or data. It's not arguments. It's none of that, right? So it's none of the things that we might think it is. It's not marketing. Definitely not going on Instagram and putting a story and be like, oh, I'm a storyteller. That's not what it is, right? It's not that. So if it's not all this, if it's not just content, then what is it? How do I tell a story? How do I begin? Well, I'm glad you asked. When I thought about this, I also went to do some research on what storytelling could be. And I read a lot online. And most definitions, they said to me that storytelling is something that, it's the way that you can insert a character, a plot, and a conclusion. In other words, if it has a character, plot, and a conclusion, it's a story. But we've all been exposed to really boring stories, right? I mean, there's stories that just don't really help us out, are not really fun to watch or read. So when we think about this, we think about then what is storytelling if it's not that? If it has a character, a plot, and a conclusion, and it's not all this, what could it be? And for me, in my work, I wanted to make sure that I told really good stories. So what I did was I actually came up with my own definition of storytelling. And this is it. Storytelling is the emotional transfer of that information, opinions, facts, data, arguments, possibilities. And it's done through the character, the plot, and the conclusion. So when you think about the word mission, right? Think about those 3 elements. It has to have a character. Who are the characters in your mission? Who are the characters in your mission for your brand, for your personal brand, or for your corporate brand, for your business? What's the plot? What's going to happen? What are you telling? What are you talking about? What happens to those characters? And how will it conclude, right? Notice that in none of this, I'm not talking yet business. I have not talked about demographics. I have not talked about the product. I'm talking strictly about the elements of story, because that is what's going to make people connect to your brand, whether it's a personal brand or whether it's your corporate brand. It's going to connect people to you, right? So think about the emotional part of that as well. That's the most important part, and that's why it's highlighted here. Emotional has to be something that connects you and I at the very human level. At the very human level. It makes you and I human. It goes beyond the book. It goes beyond the product. In fact, when you go purchase something, did you know that you don't purchase things just because you need them? You purchase them emotionally, and then you rationalize them with logic. I need those pods, right? I need that car. No, you don't really need that specific car, but you want that car, so you're rationalizing it with emotion first, and then you rationalize it with logic later. That's how we are as humans. So we first think about emotion because we're very emotional. That's how we are as humans. So let's think about, for example, how to begin this. How do we begin storytelling? When I started, I told you I failed. I failed frantically. I failed for 3 months. I had no idea how to start. I didn't know. I had asked a lot of people at Disney, at Coca-Cola, like I said, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't know where do I begin, right? So as I think about, I like how you guys are doing this. You guys want to get creative on my screen? Is that what you're doing? All right. So who did this? I'm gonna stop right here. I'm gonna give you some airtime. So whoever wrote in red, IDL, what does that mean? I have no idea what that means. Get off mute, and tell me what that means. I'm gonna give you some airtime. Go ahead.
I don't know what it means.
It's actually a C.
It's a C. That's a really bad C, by the way.
Oh,
okay,
yes,
go on.
Yes. But
okay.
It means I don't care.
Oh, you don't care. You didn't care about what I was.
I didn't do it, but.
Okay.
One of these Zoom people don't care.
What's that?
One of these Zoom people don't care, apparently. That's what they wrote.
Nice. So who doesn't care? Because if you're going to go on my screen and tell me you don't care, I'd like to know who you are.
Crazy. Tell them again.
Can you get off mute? What's that?
Why is they doing that? That's disrespectful, bro.
Yeah, that's not nice. But that's
I don't
okay.
know.
I do want to call this out. This is why I want to call this out.
Yeah, because
I want to call this out because there's teachers and people who do care that are here on this space right now. People
You're right. I woke up early for this.
That's right. So that's not even disrespectful. That's just mean. I mean, if you don't care, why are you here? Right? Why are you here? There's people here that do care. There's people here that want to learn, and you're taking up space and you're taking up screen for people that do care.
I
Somebody
mean,
wrote Google, right? Who wrote Google?
Mary, one of the things, can you stop sharing your screen for 1 second and then reshare it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Guys, just out of curiosity, everybody that's writing, keep in mind I'm jotting your names down. I'm just gonna shoot it out to your teachers.
Oh.
So you can continue if you like, but unfortunately, you got your names. I got the IPs that I'm gonna forward out to your teachers directly after the call. So, Mary, feel free to start sharing your screen again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's
And
the thing, you guys.
Chris,
Yes.
are you there? So also I want to add to that, students, there are district representatives on these calls, such as myself from both Miami-Dade and Broward. And if you're going to treat this platform as anything less than respectful, we're going to also ask that they send your names to your assistant principals who are still working so that necessary behavior modifications and implementations can take place. So if you don't want to be here, please respectfully sign off, but respect the space and the time of everybody that's on this call.
You're amazing, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And I do want to say, I do want people to participate, and I do want to encourage that, but do it respectfully, please, because it is distracting to other people who are here and who do care. And thanks for those of you who do care and showed up early as well. Thank you for that. So back to my story. I failed so much. I didn't know how to start. I didn't know where to start. I didn't have a teacher. I didn't have NFTE, right? And so it was not easy for me to think about where I began to learn storytelling. And this is where I began. I want to share this with you. I began to use something called the design thinking approach. Now, I was taking my master's course at Georgetown University at this time, and I learned that you can actually use this approach for anything, for any product. In fact, I know some of you already do use design thinking for your prototyping of your own products for your business. And what I learned here that was really important to me, the most important thing, was that to design anything, even your stories, you begin with empathy. And that was to me really important because I learned I was not empathetic at all. In fact, I took a test that told me I was not empathetic. It's called Clifton Strengths, and it's about 35 attributes that tells you your kind of like your DNA, your personality DNA. And out of the 35 attributes, number 33, like way below, was empathy. And I was like, oh man, I failed. I failed this test for empathy. I'm not empathetic at all. And so I was really distraught. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna tell stories if I can't empathize? Like, how can I do that? But then I learned that empathy is something you and I can learn. It's actually a soft skill. Something that you and I can actually practice every day. And I learned that empathy is an experience. It's the experience of understanding another person's life, another person's experience, another person's background, another person's walk of life. It's not just putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It's actually walking a whole lot in those shoes. And I want to pause here for a moment because it's really important that today we learn empathy. In fact, we're going to practice that today a little bit, okay? I'm going to start with that. If you take anything out of this storytelling course today, please learn to be empathetic because I think our world needs that today. All of us need that today. There are 3 types of empathy. The first one is called cognitive empathy, and it really just showcases that we think about people, when you think about who's there across the screen from you, they're human. They're human. In this room of humans, we have 178 people right now connected. We are all human. For that reason alone, the fact that we are all human, no matter where you came from, no matter your race, no matter your color, no matter your age, no matter your gender, no matter, we are all human, and something is happening behind us. Something that we don't know. Somebody's mother is sick. Somebody might be dealing with COVID. Somebody's friend might be dealing with COVID. Somebody's friend might be dealing with suicide. That's the human condition. And when we stop and really pause at the thought that right now somebody's dealing with something, it makes us think differently about the people on the screen that we see. It makes us pause for a moment and think, wow, somebody might be dealing with something. In fact, I'm dealing with something. My mom's not well. My mom actually had to go, she went to Venezuela. She got stuck there because of COVID. She had to travel through Cuba. So it's been a really rough time with my mom. She was sick. She is sick. And so we don't know these things. but we do know that we are human. For that reason, it is important to practice empathy and to understand that all of us deal with things. That's how businesses that actually survive are surviving today. Do you know that there's restaurants right now? There's a restaurant down the street from me that's giving free lunch every day, pickup. Hotels in New York right now are opening their doors because they're not open for the public. They're opening doors to doctors and nurses who live outside the city, and they've been working 15 hours, 20 hours, and they only come in to rest for 5 hours, right? And so they're opening their hotel rooms to house these doctors. MLB, the MLB, the company that actually creates uniforms, they're actually creating masks for COVID, for patients and for doctors. So now when we think empathetically, when we think they are human, we think differently. How can you practice that today? Ask yourself this question right now. Just pause and ask, hey, how is someone with COVID feeling right now? Physically, how could they be feeling? And emotionally, being in a hospital or possibly dying. People are dying right now. Being empathetic gets us outside of ourselves and thinks about our story differently and our impact in our story differently. That is storytelling. It's emotional. It thinks about the characters that play in, right? Another level of empathy is emotional empathy. It says we are human, right? And it's this idea that meism doesn't work anymore. Your product and your service and your brand and what you're gonna go do for the world, it's beyond yourself. You leave a mark whether for good or for bad. One person, what they do at one level affects us all individually and affects us all collectively. Think about COVID alone. This reminds us that one act from one individual, one simple thing that happened actually created a pandemic. That's how interconnected you and I are in this world. Storytelling forces us to think that way, forces us to think about the individual level and the collective level. And next is compassionate. I am human. Think about yourself and your own emotions. Sometimes we don't think about that. Sometimes we go, 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 go. We're robots. We become robotics in the robot age. What do I have to do? How do I have to do it? When do I have to do it? And then we stop and we don't ever stop to think, hey, how am I feeling? How am I feeling about this whole thing? Am I scared? Is this something that I need to think about for the future? How will this change my future? How does it change the way I live tomorrow? How does it impact my life? When you start thinking that way and tuning into your emotions, then you can tune into other people's emotions because you can say, hey, somebody else might be feeling scared too. But if you don't, if you become robotic, then you can't think of other people. So this is the way you practice empathy, and this is how you begin to design your story. Step one, we're gonna go through this real fast, so take your notes because I wanna answer questions in the end. Step one, once you began to think about empathy, designing your story is through finding a universal truth. You're gonna ask yourself, what do I want my story to feel like? What do I want my story to feel like? If it's your personal story or your business story, what will your story feel like? For us at Microsoft, the story is empowerment. We want people to feel empowered. That's our brand. That's our mission, to empower every person. And all of us know what it feels like or not to be empowered. I don't have to explain that feeling. That's why it's universal. I don't have to explain to any of you what it is to feel sad or happy. You know what it is because you're human. So think about that. What do I want my story to feel like? Second thing is, who plays the characters in the story? I like to call this the Robin to Batman effect. Oftentimes we want to be the hero in our story, or we want our business to be the hero in our story, or we want the things that we create to be the hero in our story. The reality is the stories that work best are when your product, when your service, when your brand serves someone else. You know, it's like the psychic to the hero of the story, the enabler, right? Because you know what? Success, everyone, success is a team sport. You will not get there without the people that have supported you, without the Nifties, without the teachers. A teacher saved my life. A teacher changed my life when I was a freshman in high school. So think about those characters when you think about your own origin story. How will you go tell the story when you say, hey, Miri, I invented a new phone. Okay, what's the story behind that? Why did you create that story and what's your why? What's the mission? What's the audience? Think about defining all these things. The plot, the conclusion, who is your audience? I know you talk a lot of Nifty about your target audience. That needs to be defined. That's really important. And then you create this mission. I hope that you take this. I know that we're going to share this later on. This kind of the meat and potatoes of this presentation is once you define that whole thing, the story, the audience, you define the feeling, you put it all in one big mission. My story is dedicated to blank, and it's going to help them do blank and to make them feel blank. Now, if I plug in the Microsoft story, it works really easy like this. To empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. That's our mission. My story is dedicated to every person and every organization on the planet. So it can help them achieve more and make them feel empowered. That's the power of a brand mission. Whether you use it for yourself, hey, I'm going to go and empower people. Hey, I'm going to go do this at the individual level or at the corporate level. The same goes for you in your story. Think about when you sit in front of a job and you say, hey, why do you want this job? Hey, I want this job because I want to go do this and I want to do it for this person and I want them to feel this way. Wow, you got your story straight. Hey, why are you selling that book? Hey, because I want people to know. I want to democratize storytelling. This book is dedicated to all the storytellers in the world who want to be story lords, so it can help them democratize storytelling and it make them feel empowered. Wow. That's good. You got your story straight. That's how this whole thing works. Story mission. And then you design it, you ideate, you take time to be creative. Hey, what if I replace the character? What if I modify the plot? What if I added or replaced something? What if I did something to the story? If I combined characters, if I substituted, if I did this. This is called scampering. It's an acronym, as you see there. And basically, it just works for you to give layers to your story. I often ask storytellers, hey, what does your story smell like? If you had to give it a smell, if you had to give it a color, what would it look like, right? So think about your story differently, about your brand differently. Did you know that everything you do, social media, that's your story? If you think you're going on Instagram and nobody's looking, oh, we're looking. We're definitely looking. Employers are looking. When I go and I hire people, we have high school internships. We have college internships at the freshman level. When I go hire, guess where I'm looking? To your stories, because that tells me what you're passionate about or not. Right? So you're branding yourself. Every piece of content you're giving out there, it's part of your story. So you have to think about that intentionally. You have to be savvy. You have to be smart to think, what will I do that will impact my story? How will it impact my next thing, right? And then you start thinking about the concepts. How will you prototype the story? I'm going to go real fast again because I know we're running out of time. So here you go. Here you have 8 basic storytelling techniques. A lot of people are like, oh, the hero's journey. Yeah, that's one. That's one of many. The one down there that you see, like the little lion, that's called the Lion King. I see some raised hands. I'll get to you in a minute. The Lion King story is the hero's journey. Stories of transformation. Hey, I came from the slums of Venezuela, and then I ended up working in Seattle at Microsoft. Great transformation story. And then I wrote a book, right? That's a story there. That's something to be said there. But there's many other ways. If you see here on the far left, the drama mountain, it's called the mountain. There's a way to tell a story. Drama, peak, you drop. There's so many different ways. In the middle, that's called a media res. It's a little guy kind of going in a hole. That one is the kind of story where you start with the climax of the story, right? Something like, my mother died. Ooh, and then people go, okay. And you kind of tell the rest of the story. So there are many ways to tell a story. And I talk about that in my book, and you can find it online as well. Many ways to tell a story. And then you test it, right? You define your character, you define your plot, you define your conclusion, you define your mission, you define the way you're going to tell the story, the color of the story. And then you ask yourself, hey, did it evoke the emotion that I wanted? When I talked to that person, when I went to my nifty judging panel, did it make him emotional? Did they tune in the way I wanted? Did it give the impact that I wanted? And if the answer is no, change it. Do it again. Test it again, right? It's a prototype. It's like a product prototype, the same thing. So telling stories really is designing stories. It's really thinking about designing the way that story is told beyond just telling the story. And it serves you for everything. For your job, for your persuasion of your mom, you want to go get something from her. Tell a story. It works. It works. You've been doing it always. It works every time. When you want to go for your business, when you want to tell why you're going to do your business, that's always very, very important. So think about these 5 steps, and that is what storytelling is about. So conclusion. If it doesn't have a character, a plot, and a conclusion, it's not a story. But you want to make it emotional. You want to get empathetic. You want to think about humans, because we're all humans. It's from one person to the other. So if you don't get empathetic, if you don't practice empathy every day, you're not going to land the story well. You're not going to, Steve Jobs did a really good job in telling stories. That's why he got sales. That's why he did what he did with the products, because he was empathetic. Stories are for your audience, not to your audience. That means that you actually package them up. That means that you actually think about the way the stories are told, the way the stories are designed for your audience. They're done with empathy, authenticity. Then you ideate, have fun with it, create as many ways to tell a story. And if it doesn't exist, create a new one. It's called amplifying human ingenuity. And lastly, do it with heart. Listen, if there's one thing robots don't have and will never have, is the human heart. And so they can go tell a story, they can go write a novel, but that novel is not going to be from their heart of, they broke up with their boyfriend because they didn't, right? So we get to live that. We get to live those human experiences that teach us how to tell the story. So be vulnerable and tell the stories. So that's it. I'm going to stop right here. I know there are some questions. So if we can moderate those questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them.
Absolutely. So we have Alexandra, who has had her hand up for quite some time. She was
okay.
Alexandra, you are up. How can we help you? What questions do you have for Miri?
I sent it in to you, but my question had more to do with actually implementing that storytelling that you're talking about, implementing those ideas. So I wrote, in the case of Microsoft, it's evident that although the theme was the same, when changing your message, it ultimately shifts the goal. So how do you ensure that the transition, when shifting that focus on the goal, is successful, both on how consumers interpret it and also of how the company changes as a whole in order to fit, a new ideology that's coming in?
That's a great question, Alexander. Nice to see you. So it's really important when you think about shifting, right? The time and why. It's really important why. So if you want to make a shift, you have to answer why. And you have to do that first because people will not know, and then people will not respond to that shift. I'll give you an example. Did you hear about Gillette and the whole fiasco with Gillette razor, the ad with Gillette when they came up with the toxic masculinity? Did you hear about that ad?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Gillette, when they landed that ad, right, the idea behind the ad and what they were trying to do was actually noble in a sense. What they were trying to do was basically align to this Me Too movement and say, you know what, we don't like toxic masculinity. But the problem with that was that it didn't land well because they, as a brand, had always talked about masculinity in Boys Club in their past ads. So the history was they were known as a brand who was always actually kind of sexist in the way they told their ads. So the brand sounded dissonant. It sounded off when they came off and actually changed their position, right? And they just did it without explaining. So they shifted, and that was a nice shift. They just didn't explain their shift. And so when you think about, had they done it differently, had they first, for example, came out and said, maybe the chief marketing officers would have said, hey, we recognize these are moments where masculinity, toxic masculinity doesn't sit well in our society today. We are recognizing the Me Too movement, and therefore we want to show solidarity this way and share the ad. It would have landed different because they would have explained the heart behind it, right? But they didn't. So when you think about shifting, you can always shift and pivot, and that's really important that you do. Your brand should always evolve. You should always think about differently how to do something different. Just make sure you explain the why, because that's part of the mission and people don't understand.
Awesome. Bogdan from CGHS, you are up.
Okay, thank you. I want to shout out Chris for making a summer camp last year for NFTE. And my question is, you've talked about the three types of empathy. I think it was cognitive, emotional, and compassionate empathy.
That's right.
So what do you think all of them have to be the part of the storytelling, or are there some that are more important when we are telling a story about our business, or it depends?
Great question. Great question. I think it depends. And I think each of them play a different role, right? So cognitive empathy is at the kind of at the highest level of like, hey, let me just remind myself that my story is for those humans. How will it land with those humans? Am I being considerate of those humans? If right now our brand started, like, for example, Corona, the brand Corona, they have not said anything right now. They stopped all their marketing beginning like March, I think March 13th. When things started happening here in the US. I think that's very smart as a brand. I think it's very smart because they were cognitive, right, of the impact and the fact that this was called coronavirus. So they decided, we're just going to step off and not say anything and not do anything. And I have a story about that because I actually went to the store and I bought Corona because I drink Corona. I bought Corona and it was almost gone. So people are buying the brand, even though the brand is not advertising in this moment. And I think they're being cognitive. It's a cognitive empathy of like, hey, saying, hey, right now, that's probably not something we should do. They are human. When you think about emotional empathy, we are human. Then if Corona, as an example, would have said something, they probably would have said something from the idea of us being human and being affected by coronavirus instead of us being a big brand and go drink Corona, right? So that could have been a way that they could have addressed this. They chose not to, but part of the story will always be that they said nothing, that they were at the cognitive level, that they said, you know what, we're going to stop this right here. We're not going to advertise right now. And the last one, which is compassionate, really leans in differently. I'm human. So what if the CEO of Corona would have got out there and said, you know, I recognize our brand right now it's a brand that is being talked about, it's being talked about differently. Everybody's joking about Corona. You've seen the memes. I just want to make sure that you understand that our brand stands in solidarity with what's happening with the world. We're going to go donate to the Red Cross, right? That's a story. That's a story, part of being compassionate, human, compassion and empathy. So there are different ways and not all play in. It really does depend. There are times that all of them could play in, just like as the example that I gave you. But really, it's really depends on your audience and depends on what's happening in the storyline.
Awesome. Brianna E from HML actually had put a question in the chat box. Would you add storytelling into your pitch and
absolutely
business more out there?
Oh, I think your story pitch, your pitch should be your story. If you ask me, I think your pitch should be your story. In fact, when I've been at Nifty for a while, as I said, and as a coach, I always coach my one-on-ones. I always coach them and said, make your pitch your story. I know part of your pitch has to be all of the demographics, the psychographics, and the actual business plan, but start with that. Start with your story and your why. I created this, why. I remember one of the Nifty students, one of the early ones, she actually, one of her business, it was her and another girl, student, her business was a portable, when you have a baby, when they do I forget the name, the machines that look at the babies. Gosh, I forgot. The scans. The baby scans. So she actually created a portable one because she couldn't afford to go to the hospital and get these ultrasounds all the time. And so she created a prototype for a baby ultrasound, a portable baby ultrasound. And her story was because she personally was pregnant at the moment. So that was really, really powerful. You know, she had a story to tell. And so it's really interesting when you think about, you add that story to the why. It's really, really important. So people will tune in more as part of the pitch.
So you would say that when you do your pitch, your first part is like your hook needs to be your story to kind of like bring the attention
100%.
of your audience as well. Okay.
Yeah, because that's your why, right? Why did you create this product? You have that personal story. Most of you will have a story about why you created that product. You have it. You already know it. So that is the emotional piece. The rest is just the information, but the emotional piece is like, hey, start with that. The reason I created this is this, and you tell the story, right? So that will be part of the pitch.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Brianna. Nice to meet you.
Gabrielle, you are up. How can we help?
AKA Gabo Rizma. Gabo Rizma is from our BIS camp this summer and did great, but I think you on mute. We don't hear you. Daniel, maybe you could read out his question.
He just took himself off mute. Do you want us to read it for you?
Yeah, we can't hear him.
Got it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
yes,
we hear you.
We hear you now.
Okay, so my question is, thank you for Chris and Daniel for helping me last year. And I just want to tell you, the speaker, to the person who is speaking right now, that I feel so identified with you because when I came here, I also came from Venezuela. And my question is that Microsoft and Google and all those companies are big. And their mission is easy because as a big company, they can transmit that mission easily. But my question is, as teenagers or as people who doesn't have like a reputation or money or just they're starting up, how do we transmit that mission to motivate others to follow us to finish that goal, that business that we have?
Thank you, Gabriel. I'm so glad to meet you and thank you for raising your hand. That's a great question. I think you as a teenager and you using the technologies that exist today have even more power than the big companies. You can use TikTok, you can use Instagram, you can get on LinkedIn, and you can talk consistently about what you stand for. Create your own set of values, live by those values in your mission. Use this mission template that I shared with you. Sorry, let me actually go forward, and use that and understand that and own it. Just say, hey, my story is dedicated to this people, so it can help them do this and make them feel that. When you have a target audience and you say, hey, my product or even my brand, it stands for other Venezuelans, other immigrants, 5-year-old kids in India, whatever audience you're going to help or target or inspire, that's what you're going to go talk about, and that's going to resonate. We are seeing more and more, by the way, that people are not following Microsoft. They're following Miri from Microsoft, the humans behind the brand. We know the brand is big. We know what Google and Microsoft are about, but I don't know what Miri, who works at Microsoft, is about, and I want to learn more. We're tuning in more to that idea of human connection, so you have more power than you think you do. Use the channels. Think about it, and again, think about them differently. Use the channels to share that instead. I know having fun and sharing some dance videos are fun, but aside from that, can you use those same channels to reach masses? Because you can. Social media allows that for you. So create your story and your pitch and use the channels for that. You can become a nano influencer immediately if you start doing that.
Perfect. And what happens if one of the persons or one of the people that are with you in the team are not following your mission and are not motivated enough to continue? What do you do in that case?
Yeah, that's part of the story, right? If you've actually learned stories from like Bill Gates and Alan, if you watch like Netflix behind Bill Gates, the brain of Bill Gates, you'll understand what happened to Paul Allen and Bill Gates as partners. That happens a lot. Sometimes people don't work together. Sometimes they work differently. Sometimes they have different missions. How do you bring that together? It's part of your brand story. So use that and enable that. What is that character in the story? How do you continue the brand with that idea in mind? So don't dismiss scenarios and characters and things that actually can be part of your plot. Get creative to doing that and talk to them clearly. I mean, you have to align to the mission ultimately, but how do you both work together to drive that mission, even if you have different ideas about the actual product?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Robert has been holding for a little while. He's had his hand up. Robert from HHS, you are up.
And while Robert comes off mute, I do want to share one slide, which is going to be really fun for everyone. We are giving away some books at the end of the session. It's actually through Instagram. So these are the rules for winning a book. You're going to follow Brand Storytelling on Instagram and like today's post, which mentions shouts out to Nifty, and then share a post in your story or a post related to this session today.
I actually apologize. My internet connection's unstable right now. Like the entire call is going on and off. I actually can't hear you right now.
Oh, can you type it? Can somebody ask him to type the question, please, instead?
In the meantime, also, we can go with Sabrina. She has her hand up.
Hi, Sabrina.
Hi. So I have two questions. First of all, so how can a company ensure that to always be aware and like cognitively always like other than being aware of the media and of their media exposure, what else could a company do, especially a small company, to be aware of it all and be ahead of the game?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing that you really should be looking at is not just the media, it's actually the beyond the media, because the media can actually tell you different stories that may not be true. So fact check everything to begin with, research a whole lot. One of the things I tell my boys all the time is once you see a headliner, find out who wrote that content. It's really important because you'll see somebody say, Dr. So-and-so says Coca-Cola is good for you. right? There's actually stuff that says that, like content says, you know, doctor whatever says Coca-Cola may be good for you. We all know that's not a really good drink. It's not good for your health. But a doctor is someone who graduated, got a PhD, and now they call themselves doctors. So they're not possibly maybe a health doctor. They could be a psychologist. I don't know. And they just use the headliner. So really important to think about the media in this way. Who is writing the article? Who is writing the piece of content? Where do they come from? And what is the message? And be curious about the message. Be curious about what they're saying and why. And you're going to find in your research, there's a lot of differing opinions, and there's actually the truth somewhere in there. So when you're thinking about your brand and you're thinking about what's the next thing, what, you know, I'm researching on technology, I'm researching on, you know, what they're saying about the next, you know, the next predictions. Who is actually sharing those predictions and what are the predictions based on? And then you can actually research. I think part of the biggest thing of being a producer, not a consumer, is not to just consume the media, produce something around what they're saying and really research it most. So I would say research is the biggest piece you need to start spending a lot of time on. Research different things. Scholarly articles, I can never say that, is part of one of those big points of research, a great way to research content. In your school, you have a lot of resources as well. So don't just hear the media. The media is one aspect of a lot of content, and that will give you a lot of information about where we're headed in general. You're going to get a lot of information about future predictions about business and commerce, but even more, I would say, intuitively as well. When you start thinking, when you research, you get a lot of new ideas, and you're going to find a lot of new ideas. So go with that and say, hey, maybe I was thinking about this product, and now that I did a lot of research, maybe now I'm learning I could pivot this product differently this way, because you're going to learn a lot more, and maybe about your audience, and maybe about the geographic location. So you'll be able to expand on your research.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Oh, actually, the other thing I was going to ask is if by any chance you could actually share this PowerPoint with us, like as a document? I don't know if that would be possible.
Presentation?
Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we will share it with you, of course. And and you can always connect with me, by the way, I'm segueing, but you can also connect with me personally. And if you have specific questions, I'd love to share with you.
Thank you so much.
Hey,
My pleasure.
Any type of documents you want to share before the students jump off in a few, you can actually click on file in the chat window, and then you can upload whatever documents there.
Let's do that.
I also included the link in the chat window for you guys to fill out the online form that we're going to feed back to your teachers. So you guys can get credit for attending and seeing our session today. I want to give a big shout out to all the schools and teachers out there. And Miri, all right, thank you. Jonathan Teller from HSS, thank you, Jonathan.
I didn't get to other questions. So if we can capture those questions, I'd love to actually, I don't know how, maybe if you can email them to me and I can reply and they can get it back to their teachers or something. I'd love to take time to answer those questions in the end. And I just shared the PowerPoint presentation with everyone.
Before you go, there was one question about the price of your book.
Oh, okay. So the book is actually $25 right now. It just came out. I can get a discount as well for students. So if you're interested in, first I would say, try to get it, try to win it first. See if you can get it for free. If not, then reach out to me. I can definitely see if I can get you a discount.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have time for one more, Sebastian.
Yes, I do. I'm not leaving. I know people are leaving, but I can stay on as much as you need.
All right. Sebastian.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having time to answer my question.
Hi, of course.
I wanted to ask you, how can we use professional connections to better further our mission?
That's a great question, Sebastian. You can always use professional connections. It's actually the best thing you can do. LinkedIn is one of the best resources that you will ever have. In fact, a lot of my research for my book happened when I connected with people via LinkedIn, people that I didn't know, but it was really easy because I could just type Disney and all the employers at Disney came up. So I could just send an email and say, hey, would you mind answering this question? And I got some that said yes. Some didn't answer, but some did. So professional connections today are one of the most important things, especially when it comes to even working at a company. A lot of jobs, actually most, I think 84% is the number of jobs are actually people that know each other and connected to each other versus the people that just apply, right? So the connections really do help. The best way to connect with people, especially on LinkedIn, I would say LinkedIn is your tool. So get a good profile, get on LinkedIn, and just introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Sebastian, I'm learning more about so-and-so, or I'm building my business about this. I'd love to connect with you. That's it. And then start building the relationship. Remember, being empathetic. They're human. So if you show up and you're like, hey, can you review my resume? Hey, can you give me a job? That's not human, right? People don't do that. You wouldn't walk up to somebody just to say that. So start building the relationship and say, hey, Miri, I'd like to connect with you. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to. Hey, Miri, can you spare me 5 minutes just to share with me what you learned about storytelling? So of course I'm gonna be like, of course, I'd love to share, and I'll share with you. And you start building that relationship, and now it's beyond just a connection. Now you have a relationship building, and then you can start easing into, hey, Miri, I was really thinking, I love Microsoft. What would you recommend about going to Microsoft? And maybe I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were thinking about coming to Microsoft. Hey, apply. There's this job here. Maybe I can help you get it. So it works like that when we begin to be empathetic. So make sure you're being empathetic and telling your story and having your why, right? Because a lot of people, imagine how many inbox messages I get from people who want to work at Microsoft. But I do answer all of them, but I like the ones that come and say, hey, Miri, the reason I want to come from Microsoft is this. The why is always very important. The story is very important. So use the template, okay?
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Guys, once again, thank you all for joining today. Let's all, we can unmute ourselves and all give Miri a round of applause.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Teachers, thank you for pulling this together with your students.
Thank you to you.
Guys are all amazing, and students, you guys were on best behavior. A little bit, we had a few that went rogue, but it happens, and we know better for next time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all of you teachers. Thank you for the work that you do every day. It doesn't go unnoticed. I know it. And Chris and the team, Tahaji and Janine, everyone part of NFTE, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Miri.
Quick question: which high school is HHS? Anybody know HHS?
I believe it's Hialeah High.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. This was great. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Team Nifty, if you guys can hang around. Team Nifty, if you guys can hang around, that'd be great.